During Thanksgiving dinner, I sat down at the table with my arm bandaged and my ribs burning and groaned in pain. The guests froze. My daughter-in-law raised her glass with a poisonous smile. A toast to Melvin. May he remain strong even after falling down the stairs in the dark. I hope he's learned his lesson. I put my laptop on the table and said quietly, "Now I'll show you what really happened." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. I stepped into the dining room and felt the air change. 3 faces turned toward me, and I watched their expressions shift. Surprise, discomfort, something darker underneath. The bandage on my right hand was clean and white, almost glowing against my dark skin. My ribs were wrapped tight beneath my shirt, the bulk of the binding visible. I knew exactly what they saw. An old man broken, moving like each breath cost him something precious. The table was already set with my mother's good china, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce arranged like we were a normal family, celebrating a normal holiday. Jonathan sat to the left, shoulders hunched. Bernice sat across from him in that red dress she'd bought last month. Augusta, my neighbor, occupied the far end, her kind face uncertain. Nobody spoke. I heard forks scraping against china, that high-pitched sound that sets your teeth on edge. I moved toward my chair at the head of the table. My slippers whispered against the hardwood floor my wife had insisted we install 15 years ago. The chandelier cast warm light across the table, but the warmth didn't reach anyone's eyes. I lowered myself into my chair. The movement sent fire through my ribcage, white-hot and consuming, and I couldn't hide the wince that twisted my face. My son looked away quickly. His wife watched me with eyes that glittered like wet stones. "Well," Bernice said, lifting her wine glass with practiced elegance. Her smile was bright and sharp as a knife blade. "A toast to Melvin! May he stay strong even after tumbling down the stairs. Let's hope he learned his lesson about wandering around in the dark." The words hung in the air like poison. Jonathan's laugh came out strangled, nervous. He raised his glass halfway, then seemed to forget what he was doing. "Dad, maybe you should rest more," he offered, his voice thin. You really should be in bed." "Melvin, dear, are you feeling all right?" Augusta interrupted, setting down her fork. "Should I call someone?" I didn't answer any of them. My eyes stayed locked on Bernice. She held my gaze for a moment, defiant, then looked away and reached for the potatoes. The bruise on my left cheekbone throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I'd examined it in the mirror that morning, purple spreading into yellow at the edges, the mark of violent impact. The emergency room doctor had asked me 3 times if I wanted to file a report. 3 times I'd said no, not yet. 24 hours ago, I'd been lying at the bottom of those stairs, unable to move, wondering if this was how it ended. Alone in the dark, bleeding, while the person who'd pushed me went back to bed. Now I sat at my own table, surrounded by people who should have loved me. The weight of what I knew, what I'd learned over 3 long weeks, pressed down on my chest harder than any broken rib. I reached down beside my chair with my left hand. The bag was exactly where I'd positioned it, tucked against the carved table leg. My fingers closed around the leather strap. "What are you doing?" Bernice's voice cut through the silence. "Put that away. This is Thanksgiving dinner. Show some respect." I pulled out the laptop, set it on the table beside my untouched plate. The movement was slow, deliberate, rehearsed. I'd practiced this maneuver a dozen times in my bedroom, learning how to do it one-handed. I opened the device, waiting for the screen to brighten. The reflection glowed in Bernice's eyes. She leaned forward, lips pressed thin. "Melvin, what is this supposed to be?" Her tone had changed, lost that mocking edge. Something that might have been fear. She wasn't in control anymore. Jonathan shifted in his seat. "Dad, what's going on?" Augusta's hands were folded in her lap now, her dinner forgotten. She watched me with careful attention, knowing when something significant was about to happen. She'd been my neighbor for 15 years. She'd brought casseroles when my wife died. She knew me. I positioned the screen carefully, angling it so all 3 of them could see clearly. My fingers found the touchpad, navigated to the file I'd prepared. The cursor hovered over it, a video file, time-stamped, named with yesterday's date and time, November's 27/2247. "Just wait," I said quietly. My voice felt rusty, unused, but underneath I heard something else. Steel. Authority. "Everyone needs to see something." Bernice stood so quickly her chair scraped backward with a screech. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is inappropriate. Sit down, I told her. 2 words, flat, final. There must have been something in my tone, something she recognized from a different version of me. The prosecutor I used to be, the man who'd stood in courtrooms and made juries understand truth. She hesitated, swaying. Then she sat. Her red dress seemed brighter somehow. I clicked the file. The video player opened, filled the screen. I turned the laptop so it faced them fully. My work was done. Now they would watch what I'd watched 100 times since last night, alone in my bedroom with the door locked. They would see what I'd seen, and everything would change. The video began to load. Now, I'll tell you what really happened, I said, and my voice came out steady, clear. The prosecutor's voice, the one I thought I'd left behind when I retired. Watch carefully. The screen showed the second-floor landing, the camera angle looking down the staircase. The timestamp read, November 27th, 10:47 p.m., glowing white against the darkness. The motion-activated camera had night vision, bathed everything in that eerie greenish glow. I appeared in the frame, moving slowly toward the stairs in my pajamas and bathrobe, one hand trailing along the wall. Then Bernice entered from the guest bedroom. She paused, head turning left and right, checking. Her movements were careful, calculated. She approached me from behind, silent. Her hand came up, pressed firmly against my back, and pushed, hard. Augusta's fork hit her plate with a sharp clatter. Jonathan flinched. I watched her hand fly to her mouth, watched her eyes go wide. Jonathan went absolutely still, his face draining to the color of ash. I could see him processing what he was seeing, scrambling for an explanation. There wasn't one. On screen, my body tumbled forward, arms flailing. My head struck the banister with a crack I remembered too well. And then I was rolling, falling, hitting each step. When I finally came to rest at the bottom, crumpled on the hardwood floor, I didn't move. Bernice exploded from her chair. The furniture toppled backward, crashed. That's a lie! Fake! You edited this somehow. You're trying to frame me. Her voice climbed toward hysteria, but I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the screen as the video continued. Bernice descended the stairs carefully, checked my pulse. She stood there watching me. Then she pulled out her phone and she waited. The timestamp continued counting. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 full minutes before she finally placed the emergency call. Dad, she didn't mean... Jonathan couldn't finish a sentence. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Sweat had appeared on his forehead. I let the video play until Bernice was visible on the phone, her mouth moving in what I knew were lies. Then I closed the laptop with a soft click. I have 5 more cameras throughout this house, I said. 3 weeks of recordings. Your conversations about how quickly I'll die. About what this house is worth on the current market. About how you plan the next accident if this one didn't work. You're insane, Bernice hissed. She pointed at me, her fingers shaking. Recording people without permission? That's illegal. That video won't hold up anywhere. This is my house, I replied calmly. Washington is a 2-party consent state for conversations you expect to be private. But security cameras in my own home? Perfectly legal. You knew cameras existed. I've had the doorbell camera for years. You just didn't know about these 6. I pushed back from the table, using my good hand. The pain when I stood made black spots dance, but I remained upright. Augusta had both hands over her mouth, staring at Bernice like she'd never seen her before. The breakfast conversation on November 8th was enlightening, I continued, taking a slow step around the table. You discussed whether antifreeze in my coffee would look like a heart attack. November 15th, you researched my life insurance policy on your laptop, at my dining table. November 22nd, you told Jonathan that the holidays would be convenient timing because old men have heart attacks from stress. Stop it! Bernice's scream bounced off the walls. He's making this up! Jonathan, tell him he's crazy! Tell me what? I looked at my son directly. He couldn't meet my eyes. Tell me you weren't part of this? Tell me you didn't know your wife planned to kill me for a house you could sell for $890,000? Jonathan's silence was answer enough. His throat worked, but nothing came out. Augusta stood slowly, carefully. Her chair scraped back. I think I should go home now. Please do, I told her, and I managed to make my tone gentle. And Augusta? You might receive a call from the police in the next few days. Just tell them what you saw here today." Her eyes were wet, but she nodded. She grabbed her purse from the side table and moved toward the door, giving Bernice a wide berth. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I looked at my son and his wife, the woman who'd smiled at my birthday party, who'd called me dad, who'd eaten at my table for 3 years while planning my death. "Dinner is over," I said. "Tomorrow you'll receive the official documents, eviction notice, restraining order, copies of all video evidence. I suggest you find a lawyer." Bernice opened her mouth, but I held up my bandaged hand. "I'm done listening to you," I said. "Both of you have until the end of the week to move out. Friday, 5 in the evening. Any possessions left behind will be disposed of. The locks change on Monday morning." I walked toward the hallway, each step measured. Behind me, Bernice started crying, loud, theatrical sobs meant to manipulate. Jonathan said nothing. The house I'd lived in for 30 years suddenly felt different, like the walls had witnessed something they couldn't forget. I climbed the stairs one at a time, gripping the banister. The same stairs that had nearly killed me. When I reached the top, I looked back down into the dining room. They were still at the table, frozen in the wreckage of their plans. This moment, this carefully orchestrated reveal, had begun 3 weeks earlier, when I'd heard something I was never meant to hear. But this moment, this carefully orchestrated reveal, had begun 3 weeks earlier, when I'd heard something I was never meant to hear. Early November. The evening had been mild enough for a walk, the kind of Pacific Northwest autumn night where the air smells like rain even when the sky is clear. I'd circled the neighborhood for 40 minutes, letting my feet carry me past houses glowing with warm light, past families I'd known for years. When I returned home around 9, the house was quiet, lights off downstairs. I assumed Jonathan and Bernice had gone to bed early. Then I heard voices drifting down from upstairs. I paused at the bottom of the staircase, my hand finding the banister. Their bedroom door must have been open, because Bernice's voice carried clearly through the silence. "Your father is 67. Average life expectancy for men is 76. That's 9 more years of waiting." The words didn't register immediately. I stood there, confused, thinking I'd misheard. "He's healthy, though." Jonathan's voice was quieter, uncertain. "He could easily make it to 85, maybe even 90. "We can't wait that long." Bernice's tone sharpened, impatient. "This house is worth almost $1 million. We could live completely differently, travel, buy property, actually have a life." My chest tightened. The banister felt suddenly necessary, holding me upright. "What are you suggesting we do?" Jonathan asked. His voice dropped lower, but I caught the fear in it. "We can't just... he's my father." I should have walked away, should have made noise, let them know I was home. Instead, I stood frozen, listening to my son and his wife discuss my death like a business transaction, like I was an inconvenient obstacle between them and the life they wanted. I backed away carefully, each step deliberate and silent. In my bedroom, I sat in darkness for hours. The betrayal felt physical, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. I'd given them everything, a home, security, love, and they were calculating how many years until they could cash in. Sleep never came. By morning, I'd made my decision. The electronics store was across town, a place I'd never shopped before. Deliberate choice. The clerk barely looked at me as I selected 6 wireless mini cameras, small enough to hide, sophisticated enough to capture clear video and audio. $450 on my credit card. Worth every penny. I spent that afternoon alone in the house, methodically placing each camera. One behind the living room clock, one tucked into the kitchen's decorative basket on top of the cabinets. 2 angles covering the staircase. I didn't know why at the time, just instinct telling me stairs were important. One in the hallway outside their bedroom, one in the dining room hidden behind a framed photo of Jonathan's graduation. My prosecutor training had taught me that cases are won with documentation, physical evidence, irrefutable proof. I would give them enough rope, and I would watch as they hanged themselves with it. The first week, I reviewed footage every night after they had gone to bed. Locked in my study, laptop glowing in the darkness, I watched my family plot my murder in real time. November 8th, breakfast table, Bernice leaning close to Jonathan. Antifreeze looks like a heart attack. Sweet taste, so he wouldn't notice it in his coffee. November 15th, their bedroom, late evening. Bernice at her laptop, Jonathan looking over her shoulder. Life insurance pays double for accidental death. It says right here. November 22nd. Kitchen, mid-afternoon. Bernice's voice cold and clinical. The holidays would be perfect timing. Old men have heart attacks from stress. Everyone would understand. I watched my son nod. Watched him fail to protest. Fail to defend me. Fail to be the man I'd tried to raise. The disappointment cut deeper than the betrayal. By the third week, the plan had crystallized. I sat in my study on November 27th, reviewing the latest footage. Bernice pacing their bedroom while Jonathan sat on the bed. "The stairs," she said. "At night, in the dark. It would look completely natural. People his age fall all the time. A push, a tumble, and it's over. Quick, clean, accidental." "When?" Jonathan's voice was barely audible. "Soon, this week, before he changes his will or something. Before he gets suspicious." I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were steady. The hurt had transformed into something colder, harder. They wanted me dead. They'd planned it meticulously. And now I had every word, every moment, captured in high definition. I'd spent 30 years as a prosecutor. I knew what justice looked like. This time, I'd be delivering it myself. That night, I heard Bernice's footsteps in the hallway. Heard my bedroom door open slightly, then close. Testing, checking. I lay still, waiting. When I finally rose to get water, I moved slowly, made noise, gave her time to prepare. At the top of the stairs, in the darkness, I felt her hand against my back. Those 3 weeks of surveillance gave me everything I needed. Now, the morning after Thanksgiving, it was time to take the next step. I stood in the doorway of their bedroom at 7 in the morning. Bernice was stuffing clothes into a suitcase, her movements jerky and aggressive. Jonathan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Neither had slept, I could tell. Neither had I, but I'd spent my sleepless night planning, while they'd spent theirs panicking. "You have 48 hours to remove your belongings and leave," I said. My voice was level, matter of fact. "After that, I'm changing the locks." Bernice spun around. "You can't just kick us out. We have tenant rights. We've lived here for 3 years. I almost smiled. Almost. "This house is my property. My name alone on the deed. You've paid no rent. You have no legal rights. And you tried to kill me." Her face went white, then red. "You're insane. I'll call my lawyer. I'll call whoever you want." I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. "I have the police department on speed dial now. Would you like me to file the report today instead of giving you time to pack?" Jonathan stood. "Dad, please, we can talk about this." 48 hours, I repeated. Then I walked away. By November 30th, they were gone. I watched from the front window as they made trip after trip to their car, loading boxes and suitcases. Bernice sat in the passenger seat for the final 20 minutes, refusing to help Jonathan carry the last items. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, while he struggled alone. When their car finally pulled away, I felt something release in my chest. The house was mine again. I spent December first cleaning, stripping their bedroom, washing sheets, erasing every trace of them. The work was meditative, purposeful. By evening, it was as if they'd never lived there. December 2nd, I had an appointment downtown. Robert Chen's office occupied the 40th floor of a glass tower overlooking Elliott Bay. His assistant offered coffee, which I declined. Chen appeared exactly at 10, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharp eyes. He shook my hand firmly and led me to a conference room. "Mr. Morgan, your message mentioned attempted murder and surveillance footage." I opened my laptop, plugged it into his conference screen. 6 cameras, 3 weeks of recordings. I'll start with the relevant conversations. For the next hour, Chen watched and took notes. His expression never changed, but I saw his pen move faster during certain sections. When the footage reached November 27th, Bernice planning the timing, Jonathan agreeing, Chen paused it. "This is attempted murder," he said. "Clear premeditation, but we need comprehensive medical documentation. Hospital records, doctor's statements, injury photographs." I handed him a folder. Broken collarbone, 3 fractured ribs, concussion, complete records from the emergency room. The doctors confirmed all injuries are consistent with a fall from that height. Chen paged through the documents. $8,400 in medical costs. "Covered by Medicare," I said, "but the pain is real. The injuries are real. The intent was murder. He nodded slowly. I'll prepare a police complaint. This will go to the prosecutor's office, your former colleagues. They'll take this seriously. I know they will. We should also begin the disinheritance process. Currently, your son is your legal heir. We need to change that before any trial begins. Start the paperwork, I told him. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Chen's rate was $350 an hour, but I didn't care. This was worth every penny. By the time I left, I had a timeline. Police complaint filed by December 10th. Formal charges likely by January, trial possibly by spring. On my way home, I stopped at a locksmith. Every lock in the house was changed by evening. Then came the security company, motion sensors on doors and windows, an alarm system with a panic button, enhanced camera monitoring, $1,200 for equipment and installation. The technician tested everything twice. You'll get an alert on your phone if any door or window opens, he explained. Cameras record continuously now, not just on motion detection. Everything backs up to cloud storage. Perfect, I said. By December 8th, my house had become a fortress. By December 10th, I sat in my study with the police complaint Chen had prepared, 20 pages detailing the surveillance, the conversations, the attack, the evidence. I read it twice, checked every fact, every date, every quote. Then I signed my name at the bottom. The envelope was thick, heavy with documentation. I sealed it carefully, addressed it to the King County Police Department, and set it on my desk. Tomorrow, I'd file it in person. Tomorrow, Bernice and Jonathan would receive official notification that they were being investigated for attempted murder. I leaned back in my chair, looking around my study. 3 weeks ago, I'd sat in this same spot, watching my family plot my death. Now I was watching them face the consequences. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. And I had all the time in the world. I filed the police complaint on December 10th. The next morning, Bernice received the notification. She didn't surrender quietly. December 12th, I found a legal notice taped to my front door. I tore it open standing in the hallway, reading Marcus Gray's petition with mounting disbelief. Respondent exhibits clear signs of paranoid delusions, fabricating elaborate conspiracies against family members who have devoted themselves to his care. The alleged video evidence is technically manipulated. I called Robert Chen immediately. They're claiming incompetence? His tone was dry, almost amused. That's desperate. They'd need a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, and no judge will grant that based on her word alone. Your evidence is too strong. She's calling me senile. Let her. Every lie she tells now will be another nail in her coffin at trial. But the legal maneuvering was just the beginning. By mid-December, I started noticing the change. Mrs. Patterson, who'd lived 3 houses down for 20 years, practically sprinted past me in the grocery store on December 18th. Her cart swerved wide around mine, and she studied the cereal boxes with sudden intense fascination. I'd known her since her husband died. We'd shared neighborhood watch duties. Now she couldn't meet my eyes. I understood then what Bernice was doing. She wasn't just fighting in court. She was fighting for public opinion, spreading her poison through every conversation, every phone call, every sympathetic performance. Poor Bernice, victimized by a paranoid old man. Poor Jonathan, trapped between duty and safety. The narrative was elegant in its simplicity. I was mentally ill. The videos were fake. They were the real victims. Some people believed her. I felt the isolation like a physical thing, a cold space expanding around me in public places. Former acquaintances suddenly remembered pressing appointments, invitations that would have come before, holiday gatherings, neighborhood meetings, evaporated into silence. On December 20th, Augusta appeared at my door with a folder in her hands. She was dressed for battle, her coat buttoned to her chin, her expression fierce. "I've heard what she's telling people," she said without preamble. "It's nonsense. I was there. I saw that video with my own eyes. I saw her face when she realized she'd been caught. I'm testifying for you, and that's final." The folder contained a handwritten statement, 3 pages of precise detail about Thanksgiving dinner, the video, Bernice's reaction, dated and signed. "Augusta, you don't have to... Don't insult me, Melvin. I know what I saw. That woman tried to kill you, and now she's trying to destroy your reputation. I won't be part of her lie." I felt something crack in my chest, something that had been holding too tight. "Thank you," I managed. She patted my arm. We don't let liars win. That's not how decent people operate. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray. I sat alone at my kitchen table with coffee and toast. No Jonathan arriving with forced cheer. No Bernice commanding the kitchen, orchestrating the holiday around her preferences. No tension crackling through conversations. No calculations behind every smile. Just quiet. For 4 years since my wife died, holidays had felt hollow. This year, they felt different. Not hollow. Empty in the way a house is empty after you've cleared out things you don't need anymore. Free. I spread the case documents across the table. Chen had provided updates. The competency petition would be dismissed. Gray's motions were all procedural noise. The criminal investigation was proceeding. Everything was moving in the right direction. My phone rang once that morning. Jonathan. I answered but said nothing, just waited. Dad, His voice was small, uncertain. Maybe we could talk? Meet somewhere? We'll talk in court, I told him. You made your choice 3 years ago. I hung up before he could respond. Robert Chen had asked me the previous week about my emotional state, making sure I was prepared for the trial ahead, for the public scrutiny, for the long grind of criminal proceedings. Am I angry? I'd considered the question carefully. No. Anger is imprecise. I'm committed. She tried to kill me, and now she's trying to destroy my credibility. That ends with her in handcuffs. Sitting alone on Christmas, I pulled out the folder containing all my evidence. 6 cameras worth of footage, 3 weeks of their conversations, medical records proving serious injury, Augusta's testimony, the police complaint Chen had prepared with prosecutorial precision. Bernice thought she could win through lies and manipulation. She'd forgotten something important. I'd spent 30 years as a prosecutor. I knew how cases were built. I knew how evidence withstood scrutiny. I knew how juries responded to video footage of deliberate violence. Most importantly, I knew how to wait. The investigation was about to intensify, and I was ready. The day after Christmas, while I sat organizing my evidence files, Detective Mark Williams received my case. The real investigation was beginning. He arrived at my house on December 28th, tall, mid-40s, carrying a worn leather notebook. His handshake was firm, his eyes direct. Military bearing, I recognized it immediately. Mr. Morgan, I've reviewed your evidence. It's comprehensive, but I need to ask, why did you wait 3 weeks after installing cameras? Why not confront them immediately about the conversation you overheard? I led him to the study where the laptop was already set up. Because conversations can be denied, I needed documentation of intent, planning, and action. In my years as a prosecutor, I learned that patience builds unbreakable cases. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. For 3 hours, Williams watched the footage. I walked him through the timeline, showed him each camera location, explained the cloud storage system with its unalterable timestamps. He took notes in that worn notebook, pages filling with his precise handwriting. The medical records, he said, I'll need originals. I handed him the folder. Broken collarbone, 3 fractured ribs, concussion, $8,400 in emergency room costs. He paged through them carefully. And you were 67 at the time of the attack? Still am. Fall from that height at your age. He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. We both knew how easily it could have been fatal. On December 30th, Williams visited Augusta. She called me afterward, her voice satisfied. That detective is thorough. Asked me everything twice, different ways, checking for inconsistencies. I told him exactly what I saw at Thanksgiving. That video was real. Bernice's reaction was guilt, plain and simple. January 2nd, Williams interviewed Bernice. I wasn't present, but Chen got the summary later. She'd denied everything. The cameras were illegal. The videos were fabricated. She was being persecuted by a sick old man's delusions. Marcus Gray had attempted to sound authoritative. Detective, my client's privacy rights have been violated. Any evidence obtained through illegal surveillance is inadmissible. We'll be filing motions to suppress. Chen had provided Williams with the case law, Washington state homeowner rights, previous rulings. The surveillance was completely legal. Gray's arguments collapsed before they began. But Williams wasn't finished. On January 6th, he obtained a warrant for Bernice's phone and computer. The digital forensics took a week. On January 10th, Williams called me. We found her search history, he said. His voice was flat, professional, but I heard the satisfaction underneath. December 15th, how to make stair falls fatal. December 20th, can you be prosecuted for accidental death? December 22nd, elderly fall statistics. I closed my eyes. Even knowing what she'd done, seeing the premeditation documented so clinically felt like a punch. There's more, Williams continued. Text messages with a friend, jokes about accidents with elderly people. Nothing explicitly about you, but the context is damning. When do you arrest her? Soon. I'm meeting with the prosecutor today. Jennifer Romero had been a colleague during my last years in the prosecutor's office. Smart, careful, unwilling to file charges unless the case was bulletproof. Williams brought her everything on January 18th. She called me that evening. Melvin, the evidence is overwhelming. Video, medical records, search history, witness testimony. I'm authorizing arrest for attempted murder. Bail? I'm requesting $150,000. Given the charge and the evidence of planning, I think the judge will grant it. Bernice couldn't post that bail. I knew it. Jennifer knew it. Her depleted bank account and maxed credit cards were part of the discovery. January 20th arrived cold and clear. I didn't go to the motel, didn't need to witness the arrest in person. Williams called me at noon. She's in custody. Arraignment is set for January 23rd. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat in my study, looking around the room where I'd spent so many nights reviewing footage, building my case, preparing for this exact moment. Justice moved slowly, but it moved with the inexorable weight of documented truth. Bernice had tried to kill me for money. She'd failed. Now she would face the consequences, not because I wanted revenge, though I did, but because the evidence was irrefutable and the law demanded accountability. I pulled out my calendar and marked January 23rd. Arraignment day. The day I'd sit in a courtroom gallery and watch the woman who'd pushed me down those stairs learn exactly what charges she faced. The day she'd realized that all her lies, all her manipulations, all her desperate legal maneuvers had accomplished nothing except to document her guilt more thoroughly. I'd spent 3 decades prosecuting people who thought they were smarter than the system. I knew how this ended. She was going to prison. 3 days after her arrest, Bernice stood before a judge for arraignment. I sat in the courtroom gallery, watching the woman who tried to kill me learn the charges against her. 2 weeks later, on February 3rd, the trial began. King County Superior Court, Courtroom 4C. I wore a dark suit and arrived early, taking a seat behind the prosecution table. Bernice sat at the defense table with Marcus Gray, wearing a conservative dress meant to make her look sympathetic. When I walked past her, she stared straight ahead. Jennifer Romero stood to deliver her opening statement. The evidence will show that Bernice Morgan didn't accidentally bump into Melvin Morgan. She clicked a remote, and the screen filled with surveillance footage. She hunted him, she planned his death, and when the moment came, she pushed him down those stairs with enough force to break bones and cause a concussion that could have killed him. Gray's opening was predictable. Accidental contact, darkness, tragic misunderstanding. His client was innocent. The jury listened to both, but they were already looking at the screen. Over the next 4 days, Jennifer methodically built the case. Medical records first. Broken collarbone, 3 fractured ribs, concussion, $8,000 in emergency costs. The ER doctor testified about injury patterns, then the surveillance footage. Jennifer played it 3 times for the jury. Wide angle, close angle, slow motion of the push. Each viewing revealed more detail. Bernice checking the hallway, positioning herself, the deliberate 2-handed contact. I watched the jury watch the video, saw their faces tighten, saw them glance at Bernice, then back at the screen. On February 7th, Augusta testified. She walked to the witness stand with her purse clutched tight. "I saw the video at Thanksgiving dinner," she said. "Melvin showed it to us on his laptop. It was exactly what the prosecution just showed you. No editing, just Bernice pushing him." "And how did Ms. Morgan react?" "She screamed, said it was fake, but her face showed guilt before it showed anger. That's what I remember most." Gray tried to shake her on cross-examination, suggested her memory was faulty. Augusta simply repeated what she'd seen, unshakable. February 8th, the defense began. Gray called witnesses who testified to Bernice's good character. Standard defense strategy when you have no real evidence. Then he presented his theory. Bernice had been exiting the bathroom. The hallway was dark. She hadn't seen Melvin. The contact was accidental. She barely touched him, Gray argued. Any force came from his own instability, his age, his poor balance. Jennifer let him build the entire narrative, let him commit fully. Then, on February 11th, she destroyed it. Dr. Patricia Walsh took the stand. University of Washington professor, 20 years in forensic biomechanics. She'd analyzed the video frame by frame. The force vector analysis shows approximately 42 pounds of pressure applied to the upper back region, she testified. An accidental bump generates 5 to 8 pounds maximum. This was a deliberate, forceful push. She approached a demonstration mannequin set up in the courtroom. An accidental contact looks like this. She brushed against it gently. The mannequin barely moved. The video shows this. She placed both hands on the mannequin's back and shoved. It pitched forward. The jury leaned forward, watching. Additionally, Ms. Morgan's body position before contact indicates preparation. She plants her feet, shifts her weight forward, extends her arms. These are intentional movements, not the stumbling motion of accidental contact. Gray's cross-examination went nowhere. The science was clear. February 12th, I took the witness stand. The oath felt strange after so many years on the other side of courtrooms. But I settled into the chair with familiar ease and met Jennifer's eyes. She walked me through the timeline, the overheard conversation, the 3 weeks of surveillance, the financial exploitation, $60,000 in unpaid rent and expenses over 3 years. Mr. Morgan, why didn't you confront them immediately after overhearing their conversation? Because conversations can be denied, I said. I needed documentation of intent, planning, and action. In my 25 years as a prosecutor, I learned that patience builds unbreakable cases. Gray's cross-examination was aggressive. Mr. Morgan, isn't it true that you installed these cameras specifically to entrap my client? That you were looking for any excuse to accuse her? I installed cameras to document what I'd overheard, conversations about accelerating my death. The cameras recorded exactly what was happening. If that's entrapment, then criminals entrap themselves. He tried several more angles, suggested I'd manipulated footage, exaggerated injuries, harbored resentment. Nothing landed. The evidence spoke louder than his theories. February 14th, Jonathan testified. Jennifer had subpoenaed him as a hostile witness. He sat in the witness box trembling, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His voice barely carried to the jury. "Did your wife discuss plans to harm your father?" Jennifer asked. Silence stretched out. Then, quietly, "Yes." "What did she say?" She said old people fall all the time, that no one would question it." "Did you warn your father?" Jonathan's face crumpled. "No. She said if I didn't support her, she'd leave me. I told her it was wrong, but I didn't stop her. I should have stopped her." The courtroom was silent when he finished. I watched my son leave the witness stand, unable to meet my eyes. Watched him understand finally what his weakness had cost him. After the weekend recess, Marcus Gray stood to present his final defense strategy. I knew what was coming, the desperate move of attorneys with no real case. "Bernice Morgan lived under constant psychological pressure," he began. She'd arranged her face into wounded vulnerability. An elderly man's controlling behavior, his demands, his cold treatment created an environment of fear. She was trapped, desperate, and in that moment on the stairs, she acted out of accumulated trauma. Battered person syndrome, the last refuge when evidence is overwhelming. Jennifer let him finish. Let him call his expert who testified about abuse patterns. Let him paint Bernice as someone driven to the breaking point. Then she stood for rebuttal. "The defense would have you believe this woman is a victim." Jennifer's voice was quiet, controlled. "Let's watch who the real victim was." She played a compilation from the surveillance footage, Bernice mocking my age, complaining about my presence, laughing about inheritance timelines. Her voice in every clip dripped with contempt, not fear. "Is that fear?" Jennifer asked the jury. "Or is that greed?" February 24th, the prosecution's psychological expert testified. Dr. Stephen Kimball had conducted a court-ordered evaluation of Bernice. He sat in the witness box with a thick folder, his manner clinical. "Ms. Morgan scored high on the psychopathy checklist," he testified. "She demonstrates superficial charm, grandiose self-worth, pathological lying, lack of remorse, and failure to accept responsibility. These are not characteristics of abuse victims. These are characteristics of abusers. He detailed the evaluation, her responses to diagnostic questions, her inability to express genuine empathy, her tendency to blame others. In your professional opinion, does Bernice Morgan exhibit signs of being a victim of psychological abuse? No, she exhibits signs of being a predator. February 25th. Closing arguments. Gray spoke first, repeating his themes. His delivery lacked conviction. Jennifer stood. For 40 minutes, she walked the jury through the evidence methodically. Bernice Morgan calculated his life expectancy. She researched how to kill with stares. She waited for darkness. She pushed with 42 pounds of force. Jennifer paused. Then she mocked him at Thanksgiving dinner. This isn't tragedy. This is murder attempted with precision and celebrated with cruelty. She clicked through images, the search history, the text messages, the video of the push, the medical records. The defendant would have you believe she's a victim. The evidence shows you what she really is, someone who tried to murder an elderly man for money. The jury received instructions on February 26th. 6 hours later, they returned. On the charge of assault in the second degree with intent to commit murder, how do you find? The foreman stood. We find the defendant guilty. I closed my eyes briefly. Not relief, just acknowledgement. Bernice made a sound like a wounded animal. Sentencing came the next morning, February 28th. Judge Robert Harrison reviewed the case file. Ms. Morgan, the evidence shows clear premeditation, serious bodily harm, and a complete lack of remorse. The court sentences you to 8 years in the Washington State Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after 5.5 years. 8 years. Additionally, Jonathan Morgan, you have pleaded guilty to criminal conspiracy. While you did not actively participate, your knowledge and failure to warn made you complicit. The court sentences you to 18 months probation, including mandatory counseling and a permanent no-contact order with your father. Jonathan sat frozen. Permanent criminal record. Employment prospects destroyed. Ms. Morgan, do you wish to address the court? Bernice stood. For a moment, I thought she might show remorse. Instead, she turned to face me. You did this! Her voice rose to a scream. You set me up. You destroyed my life because you're a bitter, vindictive old man who couldn't stand that we didn't worship you. This isn't justice. This is revenge. The bailiffs moved quickly, but she kept screaming as they restrained her. They escorted her through the side door. Her voice echoed until the door closed with a heavy thud. The courtroom settled into silence. Judge Harrison adjourned. I stood slowly, put on my coat, and walked toward the exit. Jennifer caught up with me in the hallway. Melvin, she touched my arm. Are you all right? I'm fine. She's going to prison for a long time. I know. She studied my face. Is it enough? I considered the question. 8 years in prison, 18 months probation for Jonathan, both with permanent records. The criminal phase is complete, I said. Now comes the rest. Jennifer's eyes widened. Civil suit? Robert Chen is expecting me on March 1st. She almost smiled. Of course he is. I left the courthouse and drove home through afternoon traffic. The trial was over. Justice had been served. But my work wasn't finished. The criminal trial ended in late February, but my work wasn't finished. On March 1st, I walked into Robert Chen's office with a new objective: financial consequences. Bernice would serve 8 years in prison. Now, I would ensure she and Jonathan spent the rest of their lives paying for what they did. I slid a handwritten list across Chen's desk, each figure documented with receipts and calculations, my methodology as precise as my prosecutor days. Medical expenses are straightforward, Chen said, reviewing the numbers. Pain and suffering is subjective but justified. The housing costs are your strongest claim. 3 years, documented market rate. Total comes to $120,050. They lived in my house rent-free for 3 years while planning to kill me, I said. They caused $8,000 in medical bills and forced me to spend money on security. I want every dollar documented and recovered. Chen filed the civil lawsuit on March 15th. The complaint detailed everything: medical costs, pain and suffering, 3 years of unpaid housing, security equipment expenses, each item backed by documentation. The trial was brief. Criminal conviction established liability. The civil court didn't need to relitigate guilt. By early May, the judge awarded full damages, $120,050. Bernice and Jonathan had nothing. Their debts already exceeded $43,000 from attorney fees, motel costs, and basic expenses during the criminal proceedings. Now, they owed me another $120,000. Total debt. Over $140,000 they could never repay. Chen executed the judgment through asset seizure. Jonathan's Toyota Camry, their joint bank account, personal property. Total liquidation, $22,000, a fraction of what they owed. On May 12th, a sheriff's deputy arrived at Jonathan's studio apartment in Tacoma with seizure papers. Jonathan surrendered his car keys with trembling hands. I wasn't there to see it, but Chen provided details. Neighbors watched from windows as the vehicle was towed away. Jonathan's phone call to Chen's office came 2 days later. I listened to the voicemail recording. "Please." His voice was small, broken. "I can't pay this. I lost my job. We have nothing. Can we work out a payment plan? Anything?" I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He'd made his choices. These were the consequences. "We have recovered the vehicle and bank account," Chen reported during our May 18th meeting. "Total liquidation value approximately $22,000. That leaves $98,000 outstanding, which they'll never pay. Their credit is destroyed." "Good," I said. Jonathan had lost his IT position in mid-May. Background check revealed his criminal conviction. Employment prospects eliminated. He was working as an Uber Eats courier now, making barely enough to cover rent in a $950 studio apartment. His gross income, $2,100 monthly. After taxes, utilities, food, and gas, he had nothing left. The debt would follow him for life. The life he'd chosen, the consequences he'd earned. On May 25th, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter. Plain paper, neat handwriting, 3 sentences. No emotion, just statement of fact. "You wanted my house. Now you have 8 years to think about it in a cell measuring 6 by 9 feet. Justice." I folded it precisely, addressed it to Bernice at the Washington Correction Center for Women, and mailed it without a return address. She would read it and understand. Everything she'd planned, everything she'd wanted, had resulted in the exact opposite. Not tragedy, consequences. My final legal action came in late June. I sat across from Linda Martinez, the notary, in her small office. The will revision lay between us, every word precise. "I want it explicitly clear," I told her. "Jonathan Morgan receives nothing, 0 inheritance, all assets to the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, no ambiguity." She reviewed the document carefully. "This is unambiguous, Mr. Morgan. Your son is not mentioned as a beneficiary anywhere in this will. Your entire estate passes to the charity you've designated." "Good." She applied her seal with careful pressure. I signed my name. She signed as witness. The document became official. Jonathan's inheritance, the thing Bernice had been so eager to access, the motivation for his complicity in attempted murder, eliminated completely. When I died, whether in 9 years or 30, he would receive nothing. Not $1 of the house he'd tried to steal. The betrayal's reward, nothing. I left the notary's office on June 28th, holding my copy of the new will. The afternoon sun was bright, warm against my face. I walked to my car feeling the weight of completed tasks, every legal mechanism deployed, every consequence enforced, every avenue of benefit eliminated, justice, systematic and thorough. By July, the pieces had fallen into their final positions. Bernice served her sentence behind bars at the Washington Correction Center for Women. 8 years stretched before her, minimum 5.5 before parole eligibility. Jonathan struggled in his Tacoma studio apartment, delivering food orders on a bicycle for survival wages, crushed under $140,000 in debt he could never repay. He'd written me a letter begging forgiveness. I read it once, then filed it away unanswered, and I began the next chapter of my life. Mid-July, I sold the Queen Anne house, $890,000. The buyers were a young family, excited about the space. "This house sold fast," the agent said at closing. "The buyers are already planning renovations." "It should have a family," I told her. "It needs better memories than what I'm leaving behind." After taxes and fees, I netted $820,000. I stood in the empty house one final time after the moving company cleared everything. Walked through vacant rooms where my wife and I had raised Jonathan, where I had later endured 3 years of humiliation. I touched the wall where family photos once hung. Then I locked the door, handed the keys to the agent, and walked away. The house held too many memories, good ones I cherished, bad ones that needed releasing. Time to move forward. Late July, I purchased a smaller apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. $340,000 for 2 bedrooms, and that magnificent view. I signed the papers on July 28th, accepted the keys, and immediately walked to the balcony. I stood there for 10 minutes, watching the water, feeling possibility replace burden. I invested the remaining $480,000 in a conservative portfolio, dividend stocks, municipal bonds, real estate trusts. The portfolio generated $1,800 monthly. Combined with my pension of $4,200, I had $6,000 a month, more than enough. Augusta called to check on me in early August. "How's the new place? Are you settling in all right?" "Better than all right," I told her, looking out at the water. "I can see the water from my living room. I wake up and feel light. I didn't realize how heavy that house had become." "You deserve this, Melvin. You deserve peace." "I'm finding it," I said. I enrolled in watercolor painting classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never found time for. The instructor, a patient man named Michael, watched me attempt my first landscape. "Don't worry about making it perfect, Melvin," he said. "Art is about expressing what you see and feel, not exact reproduction." After spending decades focused on facts and evidence, that's harder than it sounds, I admitted. But I'm learning. I met new people in the class, shared coffee with a retired teacher, attended a gallery opening with 2 women from the Wednesday session, built a social life focused on things I enjoyed. Mid-August, I booked the Alaska cruise, 7 days, departing September 5th. Inside passage, glaciers, wildlife excursions. "You'll love it," the travel agent said. "Incredible scenery." "I planned this trip with my wife 20 years ago," I told her. "Never found time. I'm finding time now." August 30th arrived quiet and clear. I carried my coffee to the balcony at dawn, settled into my chair, and watched the sunrise paint colors across Puget Sound. I thought about the past 10 months, the overheard conversation, the surveillance cameras, the push that could have killed me, the Thanksgiving reveal, the investigation that vindicated me, the trial that convicted her, the civil lawsuit that destroyed them financially, the will change that eliminated future benefit. All of it necessary, all of it just. Bernice would serve years in prison, her freedom stolen as she tried to steal my life. Jonathan would struggle with debt and regret, his comfortable future replaced by courier shifts and financial ruin. Both would carry criminal records permanently. Both would remember what they'd tried to do and how completely they'd failed. I felt no triumph in their suffering, no vengeful glee. Just quiet acknowledgement that consequences had been delivered appropriately through legal channels. Justice achieved, life reclaimed. I sipped my coffee and watched the sun climb higher. A sailboat moved across the water, its white sail bright against blue. Seagulls called overhead. A ferry crossed toward Bainbridge Island. I was 67 years old. Bernice had calculated I had 9 years left when she was planning my death. Average male life expectancy, minus 67. But I was here, breathing salt air and tasting good coffee, and she was in a cell. I had years ahead, many years, if I was fortunate. Years to paint and improve. Years to travel to places my wife and I had dreamed about. Years to build friendships with people who chose me for who I was. And not one of those years would be wasted on people who didn't deserve my time or thoughts. The sun cleared the horizon fully. The day began fresh and new. My day. My life. My terms. I finished my coffee, stood, and went inside to get ready for my painting class. Tonight I'd work on the Alaska itinerary. Tomorrow I'd have coffee with Augusta. Next week the cruise departed. The past was complete, the consequences permanent, the future entirely mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.